Okay. Good evening, guys. Hope you're doing well. Tonight, we're going to talk about what the antediluvian world was like, or the pre-flood world, the pre-great flood world. If you've ever wondered what it looked like in a picture, we're going to get into that tonight. So the people of those days, they were not imbeciles. In my opinion, they were far more intelligent than we give them credit for. And my contention is that they were smarter and far superior than us. The antediluvian world was not primitive. It was highly advanced, yet it was a false grandeur. This was an empire of staggering beauty that was, it was built on treason and sustained by blood and violence. This is the only reading that makes the text and the ground level tell the same story. So let's look at the soil itself first. So between roughly 4,500 and 3000 BC, the first true mass scale agriculture erupts across the planet it was a synchronized flash that still has no naturalistic explanation. At Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, 20-ton limestone pillars shaped like a T. They were carved with foxes, scorpions, vultures, human arms. These things stood upright in perfect circles long before anyone is supposed to have metal tools or even a wheel. In Baalbek in Lebanon, three dressed stones, each weighing over 800 tons, are laid as the foundation for a platform that still defies every lift crane that we own today. Over in Giza, the Valley Temple is built from rose granite that was quarried 500 miles away in Aswan. This is the hardest surface on the earth, just about. These things were planed so flat that you can lay a straight edge across, like across 20 feet, and see light only at the very ends. The corners were cut to tolerances of 2/100ths of an inch. At Puma Punku in Bolivia, andesite rocks of they were like 130 tons. These things are sliced with internal right angles inside the stone, and they were drilled with holes that were spaced exactly 55 millimeters apart, and they locked together with poured copper I-beam clamps that look factory made. How about Sacsayhuaman outside Cusco? 200-ton polygonal stones are literally fitted so perfectly that 500 years of earthquakes, they haven't moved them a single inch. And you can't even, they're so tight, you can't even put a piece of paper between the joints. This is amazing. This is not like a scattered curiosity. From end of planet to end of planet, these are signatures of one single technological movement. It was global, it was sudden, and it was pre-flood. So let's look at the fields that fed the builders. In that exact same window of time, the wild incorn wheat had 7 chromosomes. Okay, this is replaced overnight, and by overnight I mean in a very short period of time, not like literally overnight. um, but it's replaced by a thing called emmer wheat, but it had 14 chromosomes. Now, wild emmer, which has 14 chromosomes, is replaced overnight by free threshing wheat, like it's called hexaploid wheat, but it has 42 chromosomes. These are not like minor improvements. They are new species, as it were, that have appeared in one archaeological layer. Cattle. Okay, cattle in the Levant suddenly stand 50% taller than their wild aurochs ancestors. Um, the the horn cores that are twice as thick. The sheep in Mesopotamia, they lose their coarse hair and they grow wool in one fine wool in one generation. I mean, pigs in Anatolia, they reach sizes not seen again until modern factory farming of our day. These are not the patient results of selective breeding over centuries. This happened very quickly. These are this is my position. They were deliberate and genetic jumps. They were hybridized crosses and that leapt species barriers in a single human lifetime. The Watchers did not guess; they engineered. They taught men how to force chromosome doubling in grains so that one valley could feed an army or feed whatever it was that they were feeding. They taught how to cross wild aurochs with early domestic stock to produce oxen that were strong enough to handle bigger tasks. What those tasks were, we don't know. They taught selective breeding which were of horses into war mounts that could possibly carry armored Nephilim at full charge. How about like dogs that were bred into mastiffs that could pull down bison? The result was agricultural surplus on a scale that we have never matched without petroleum. Even then, we still don't match it. I mean, one crescent of land that supporting populations that would not be seen again until the steam engine age, a little bit before our time now. The cities that surplus built were breathtaking. The Uruk in southern Iraq swells to 80,000 people behind walls that were 6 miles around. The Iana district covers hundreds of acres of whitewashed terraces that rise in perfect steps towards a central ziggurat, whose glazed brick summit at the top it flashed blue and gold for like 50 miles across the plain. You could see it from that far. Tel Brak in Syria has a palace with, like, I think it was like basalt columns and floors that were inlaid with mother of pearl and tapis lazuli. The Mohenjo-Daro, if I pronounce it right, in the Indus Valley, same centuries, has covered brick sewers, multi-story homes with private bathrooms and a public bath the size of an Olympic swimming pool sealed with bitumen. All of this appears as if someone pressed unpause on a civilization. Like it was fast forwarded in a very short period of time. Someone did press the button, or several watchers, many watchers did. So here's the bargain that made it possible, made all this possible. And this is spoken plainly from Genesis 6 with my creative rendition. So the watchers came to mankind and said, give us your daughters in marriage, right? And we will give you knowledge that will make you lords of the earth right now. And of course, mankind was about it, and they said yes. And so we handed over excuse me, we handed over our daughters. They handed over the keys to creation essentially and taught us things that it was not the time to teach. So that's why the text in the Bible says, excuse me, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and these sons of God, they took wives, any they chose. And that is why the very next sentence says the Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterward. It said it's in that sequence in the text. That's why the earth became corrupt in God's sight and filled with violence. Um, this was not because men slowly drifted into sin. They were taught how to sin better. Because men willingly entered a marriage covenant with rebels in exchange for power, I'll, the world was thrust into violence. Here, I'll give a few common objections. One would be, what those were just powerful human men taking multiple wives. The sons of God language is poetic, right? The giants were tall warriors. They're not hybrids. You're reading fantasy into history. Now, I would respond with, then why is Peter and Jude, why do they both say that the angels who sinned did not keep their own place or their own domain, but they left it? They left their proper dwelling and are now kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day, judgment day. Those same letters tie that sin to going after strange flesh, and it's the same breath as the Sodom and Gomorrah story, the strange flesh part, where men went after men. And every Jewish writer from several centuries before Christ until several centuries after, they read sons of God as the angels, as the angelic beings, without a second thought. The flood is so like the flood is never presented as punishment for human polygamy. It's presented as a specific corruption that ruined every living thing that God had made. It corrupted it, it twisted it. It wasn't how it was supposed to be. The Sethite view, which is wrong, is it's late, it's polite, and it's embarrassed, and it's truncated super like it has a supernatural truncation. The text is none of those things outside of, I mean, it's none of those things. It's a record of cosmic treason that's sealed with a wedding, with wedding vows. Um, so watch what God did, or more accurately, what he did not do. God waited. Yahweh waited. He when all this was going on, he waited. He did not intervene in the moment that the first watcher descended, okay? He did not send lightning the day that the first hybrid drew its breath. He waited. He did not open the fountains of the deep the first time a giant king sat on a throne on a megalith. He waited. He waited until the cry of the oppressed rose to him. It says that the people began to cry out in those days. That's what that means. The Hebrew word for the violence that filled the earth is Hamas, which is interesting given the news that we experience nowadays. The same word that's used when Israel cries out under Egyptian slavery, and God says, I have surely seen the oppression of my people. Right? Remember when he said this? I have heard their cry. Their cry went up to him. He heard it. And he spoke what he had heard. The same word used when Abel's blood cries from the ground. God hears these things. He hears it. Blood has a voice. Trafficked daughters have a voice. Okay? Enslaved farmers have a voice. God does not move until a voice or many voices cry out to him, which they did in this case. That is why he later tells Abraham the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So he waits until the cup overflows, and the cup, meaning the cup was filled with sin, and so he waits for it to overflow, and then he acts. So he waited in the days of Noah until the daughters are given in marriage and had become a slave class, until the knowledge that was received in exchange had become chains. Okay, until the Nephilim had turned the entire earth into one vast slaughter pen, and the cry of the broken family, excuse me, the cry of the broken was finally of the broken families were finally pierced. It finally pierced the throne room, and only then did God say, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever." And only then did he tell Noah that the end of all flesh has come before me, meaning that that time period was the amount of time before the flood was coming, not their age limit. The flood was not impulsive rage; it was covenant justice, and God was answering this covenant cry. It was, um, I'll give you another objection. So if how about if God is sovereign, then why allow the bargain in the first place? Why let his own creatures hand over their daughters for forbidden knowledge? Because love is not force. the same freedom, okay, the same freedom that lets a seraph cry, "Holy, holy, holy," in the throne room itself. Well, this freedom lets another seraph say, "I will ascend and take God's throne," as it was shown in the scriptures. The same freedom that lets a bride say, "I do," to the lamb lets her say, "I do," to the dragon. You can go both ways. So like, but the same passion, the same freedom, excuse me, the same freedom that crowned mankind with glory and honor on the sixth day lets mankind trade that crown for a handful of stolen secrets. Stolen as in taught by the watchers, not taught by God. Remember, they left their place and did what they were not supposed to do. God had already promised a seed who would crush the serpent's head. He knew the watchers would try to corrupt that seed through hybridization, and God waited, right? He waited. He didn't say he knew that mankind would try to seize the kingdom by force instead of waiting for the king. God let them try because the only way to expose treason is to let it speak its vows out loud. You can't commit treason without doing it, right? So the cross is the final demonstration. God does not stop rebellion with a thunderbolt. He overcomes it with blood that's freely given. So the antediluvian world ran its course. It was done. Daughters were given in marriage. Knowledge was received in exchange. Wheat doubled its chromosomes, and cattle doubled their shoulders, meaning the thickness, the height. Stones that weighed 1,000 tons were dressed and placed. We can't even figure out how they did it. We don't know. Cities rose like mirages. Temples, they flashed in the sun. Giants, they sat on thrones and demanded tribute in flesh. And the earth filled with violence until the cry reached God's ears. So then after that, the subsequent earth-wide event was that the windows of heaven were opened. God acted upon response of the people's prayer. The grandeur was false, the watcher's grandeur, because the foundation was filled with violence and they stole worship. The same hands that planed the valley temple granite to optical flatness, remember, also split human skulls. I mean, the same minds that doubled wheat chromosomes also they bred predators that hunted men for sport. And that part is argued. Um, a little caveat there, but the the following that I'm about to say is from the Gilgamesh epic. It's a great tale, but here we go. So Humbaba, the terrible, part man, part monster. He was guardian of the cedar forest, and the Sumerian king list remembers the demigods who survived the flood in pockets, as it were. Canaan remembers the Rephaim, the Zamzumin, the can't pronounce it, the Emim, the tribes whose beds were 13 feet long and whose bones required iron to break. Every nation, ancient nation, has kept the memory of this because every ancient nation lived in the shadow of their ruins. They know the stories. It's written down in stone. It's in their language. Another common objection to this is, well, you're conflating myth with history. Those megaliths were built over centuries by organized labor. The the jumps were not they're not just domestication. The plants are exaggerated warrior tales, and you're turning the Bible into pseudo archaeology. It's such a played out trope. I would say, why does Göbekli Tepe? It was deliberately buried under it literally 500,000 tons of dirt the moment it was finished. It's as if the builders knew that something was coming, meaning the flood. I would also ask why the Baalbek Trillathon. the structure. It sits on a foundation. It sits on foundation layers that predate every known civilization in the Levant by millennia. And they cannot be moved today with our best equipment. We can't do it, and we don't know how they did it. I have a theory, but that's not part of this talk. But so, but I would ask why Puma Punku. The blocks have internal grooves inside of it and drill holes that are accurate, like literally 2 thousandths of an inch. Features that we can only reproduce with diamond tipped machines. Did they have that? No. Well, how about why did the wheat genome, it doubled in one archaeological instant um, instead of over a millennia? And why does the Book of Enoch, which is quoted by Jude and quoted by Peter, but it lists the exact forbidden arts, which were metallurgy, right? Astronomy, sorcery, root cutting, and every single one of these things appear in the ground the moment the text says that the watchers descended. The evidence is not pseudo archaeology. It is if you're a materialistic atheist. But this is the only archaeology that matches, excuse me, that matches the text. Another objection to what I'm saying could be like, what? So if they were so advanced, why did God grieve? Like, why destroy something so beautiful? Well, beauty that's built on stolen authority is still tyranny. It's still tyranny. I mean, the Watchers did not come to like serve mankind; they were supposed to, but they didn't. They came to replace mankind. They wanted a people of their own. They hybridized the human seed to block the promised seed. They hybridized livestock to feed the hybrids. They hybridized plants to feed the armies that served the hybrids. It's not hard to figure out. They raised megaliths as thrones for them or for themselves. That part's argued. It could have been for the hybrids. Either way, every stone, every canal, every double chromosome was a brick in a tower whose top was meant to reach heaven and keep heaven out. It was replacement. The golden age was a gilded, this sounds corny, but it was a gilded cage, and it was. The flood was the only way to break the bars with like literally without breaking the promise. So like eight souls, you know the story of Noah. Eight souls walked off the ark into a stripped, I mean stripped infant world. The megaliths were buried under I mean meters of sediment. I mean who knows how much sediment. The hybrid genomes drowned. The surplus vanished and the watchers were chained in the abyss, the Genesis 6 watchers. That's where they are currently now. But their memory has lingered, and so have their demon sons. Every culture kept the story because every culture inherited the consequences, and that's the antediluvian world. It's not primitive. It was utopian for a while, but it ended in violence that filled the world. It was a breathtaking, beautiful with a tinge of black. It was blood soaked, genetically engineered rebellion that wore the mask of progress. So, but, well, that's all I have to say on that for now. My mind has stopped. So I do appreciate you guys watching and thanks for hanging out. We're going to get into coming up soon. We'll do some witch stuff, sorcery stuff. Um, Even some tulip stuff. We'll do some PSA stuff. I'm trying to crank them out as quick as I can. But I do appreciate you. And I pray that the Lord bless you and the Lord keep you. Take care, guys.